Before we dive in, let me leave you with a truth that echoes across every chapter in human history. Nothing we are began in silence. Every civilization, every story, every ancestor left a trail of wisdom waiting to be rediscovered. What you are about to hear is a part of a legacy, preserved, decoded, and brought back to the forefront. I'm OG Mooney. Welcome to AIlegacyLab.
Let's walk carefully here. Some truths aren't loud, they're steady. They sit beneath the noise, waiting for someone bold enough to lift the dust. Tonight, we talk about Jesus. Not the painted version, not the cathedral portrait, not the soft blue-eyed figure crafted for empire. We're going to meet the man who walked between Africa and the Middle East, the man whose footsteps shaped history, the man hidden behind centuries of retouching. Let's go deeper. Forget the Renaissance image. Forget the pale skin and poured silk hair. Forget the soft European glow. The real Jesus was a Middle Eastern Jew, a brown-skinned man of the Levant. Dark wavy hair, brown eyes, broad features shaped by desert sun, not European winters. If you saw him today, you'd think he was Arab, or North African, or Ethiopian adjacent. He did not look like the portraits. He looked like the people of his land, strong, sun-toned, rooted in ancient soil. Pause here. Let that settle. The image you've been sold is a fiction. A powerful one, but a fiction nonetheless. The historical person was a man of color, a product of the very region that gave birth to civilization. When we change the image, we start to change the story. It stops being about a distant, otherworldly figure and becomes about a man of the earth, a man who looked like the people he walked among. That simple fact alone challenges centuries of interpretation. Now, let's talk about the world he walked in. Jesus spoke Aramaic on the street, Hebrew in the temple, and enough Greek to move through empire. He lived under Roman occupation, a world of heavy taxes, military presence, and deep social divide. This was not a peaceful garden scene. This was survival. This was politics. This was empire pressing down on ordinary people. So when Jesus spoke, he wasn't whispering spiritual poetry. He was challenging power, calling out corruption, lifting the poor and confronting the elite. Think about it. His messages were radical. He told the rich to give away their wealth. He told the marginalized they were blessed. He broke social and religious rules constantly, eating with outcasts and healing on the Sabbath. That's why Rome killed him. They didn't crucify harmless men. They crucified threats. They crucified political dissidents, rebels, and anyone who threatened the established order. The crucifixion was a public warning, a tool of imperial terror. To understand Jesus, you have to understand the oppressive political climate he was born into. His words were fire in a dry field. Here's the part many don't expect: historical receipts. Writers who didn't even follow him confirmed his existence. Tacitus, the Roman historian. Josephus, the Jewish historian. Pliny, the younger, writing about early followers. Even mentions in the Talmud. These aren't Christian sources. These are outside voices. Voices with no reason to invent him. Tacitus, writing about the Great Fire of Rome, mentions Christ and his followers being persecuted by Nero. Josephus refers to James, the brother of Jesus, who was called Christ. These are brief but crucial mentions from men who had no investment in the Christian faith. When your enemies write your name, you were real. Simple as that. The academic consensus is clear. A man named Jesus did exist. He was a Jewish teacher from Galilee. He gathered followers, and he was crucified by the Romans under Pontius Pilate. The debate is about his divinity, not his existence. He left a footprint so deep that even those who disagreed with him had to write him down. Now watch this. This is the part history class avoided. Jesus' African connection. His story starts with an escape. As a toddler, his family fled to Egypt to escape a king's death sentence. An African nation. His earliest safety came from African soil. That's not just a footnote. It's a foundation. And long before Europe embraced Christianity, Africa already held it close. Ethiopia, Sudan, North Africa. These places carried the faith before Europe even opened the door. The Ethiopian eunuch in the book of Acts is one of the first recorded non-Jewish converts, bringing the message back to his homeland. Some of the earliest, most influential Christian scholars were African, Athanasius, who shaped the doctrine of the Trinity; Tertullian, the father of Latin Christianity; Augustine, one of the most important thinkers in Western history. They weren't just participants, they were architects of the faith. So when we talk about Jesus, we're talking about a man whose story touched Africa long before Europe ever painted his face. The roots of Christianity run deep into African soil. So what happened? When Rome adopted Christianity, everything changed. The Emperor Constantine saw its power to unify his fracturing empire. But they didn't just take the message. They took the imagery. They took the face. They took the narrative. Jesus was repainted to look Roman, European features, European hair, European skin. Why? Because empire knows the power of an image. A familiar face builds control. A familiar face builds loyalty. A familiar face becomes law. The brown-skinned revolutionary from a colonized land was transformed into a white, serene figure that looked like the conquerors. The real Jesus challenged empire. The repainted Jesus served it. That shift rewired centuries of belief. This wasn't just an artistic choice. It was a political one. It was a way to disconnect Jesus from his radical anti-imperial roots and make him a symbol of the very power structure he confronted. Breathe for a moment. That's a lot to absorb. That rebranding has had a profound and lasting impact on the entire world. Here's the bridge. While Europe was repainting Jesus and entering what some call the Dark Ages, Africa was building knowledge. Timbuktu was rising with light. In Mali, scholars were studying math, medicine, astronomy, law. They preserved ancient Greek texts that Europe had lost. And emperors like Mansa Musa were shaping global economies with wealth the world had never seen. His pilgrimage to Mecca was so lavish it destabilized the price of gold for over a decade. Africa wasn't waiting for a story. Africa was writing its own. Africa was a center of learning, wealth, and culture. And that's the world Jesus' story eventually walked into, a world where Africa stood tall, brilliant, and undeniable. The narrative that Africa was a dark continent waiting for enlightenment is a historical fiction designed to justify colonialism. The truth is far more complex and far more impressive. So let's bring this home. The real Jesus was not a mythic painting, not a soft European symbol, not a character carved to comfort empire. He was a brown-skinned Middle Eastern revolutionary, a man shaped by ancient cultures, African borders, and the raw edges of oppression. A man who spoke truth loud enough to echo through empires. He belonged to the colonized, not the colonizer. He stood with the poor, not the powerful. His message was one of liberation, not submission. And today, we honor him not by repainting him, but by restoring him. By seeing him for who he was, a man of his time, his people, and his land. A figure whose true legacy is far more powerful than the pale imitation we've been shown. This is the AIlegacyLab, where history breathes again, where truth stands tall, and where we bring the past home in its real colors. If this resonated with you, subscribe and join us as we continue to uncover the stories that have been hidden in plain sight. Thanks for watching.
Another chapter reclaimed, another piece of history placed back where it belongs. If you have found any meaning in this, let it sit with you. Let it sharpen your vision, not just for the past, but for who we are becoming. I'm OG Mooney, and this is AIlegacyLab. Honoring truth, protecting legacy, one story at a time. Until next time, stay curious.